warm welcome to our today's webinar. The topic is AI in legal and compliance, from expectations to real risks. My name is Yulia and I'm Vice President for Digital Engagement and Sustainability at Compliance and Business Ethics Association, and I'm delighted to moderate our today's discussion. Thank you very much for joining us. We know that many of you are connected from different time zones, so we truly appreciate your time and interest. Today's session will run for 1 hour, plus minus 10-15 minutes. Our focus will be practical, how AI is already being used in legal and compliance functions, what organizations expect from it, and where real risks begin. But before we move into our today's discussion, I'd like to take a moment to sincerely apologize to our participants from the UK and the Netherlands who may have joined 1 hour earlier. Please accept our sincere apologies. There was a mistake in time zones in our announcement. We truly appreciate your patience, flexibility, and understanding. And thank you for staying out with us despite this inconvenience. Let me introduce our today's speakers. First, we are joined by Donnelly, founder of Enzai, an AI governance and enabling software platform that helps organizations maximize AI adoption while minimizing risks. Ryan trained as a lawyer and practiced for over 7 years in London and Belfast before founding Enzai in 2021. He brings a strong external perspective on AI governance, AI system development, market trends, regulatory expectations, and how organizations can adopt AI responsibly at scale. Ryan, thank you very much for being with us today. We are also joined by Timur Khassanov-Batyrov, co-chair of the AI, Cybersecurity and Data Privacy Committee at the Compliance and Business Ethics Association. Timur brings a very practical in-house legal and compliance perspective. He will help us to look at AI from in-house, from inside the organization, how legal and compliance teams actually use AI, what challenges they face in practice, and how they can balance innovation, risk, accountability, and professional judgment. Timur, thank you so much for joining us as well. So today we have 2 highly complementary speakers and 2 complementary perspectives. Ryan will help us to look at AI governance, market trends, and external expectations, while Timur will bring the internal legal and compliance views. So thank you for joining us, Timur and Ryan. I think floor is yours. I'll be monitoring the chat, so if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, either in LinkedIn Live or in Zoom. This is an open discussion platform, so you're very welcome. Okay, Ryan, I think you can start with an external perspective on AI governance, maybe on external regulations evolving and existent currently in the UK or in the EU.
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you very much for having me today. This is a pleasure to be able to speak with you all today on a topic that is very dear to my heart, which is AI governance. So for those who don't know, AI governance is really about trying to put the right structures in place around this incredible technology to ensure that ultimately it does the right thing. And as you may know, there are already a number of different laws and standards emerging in this space. The one that is most top of mind is naturally the EU AI Act here in Europe. But of course, there are other standards and laws around the world. There is a lot of sort of state level laws in the US. And there's also standards from international standards bodies like NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology in the US, and also ISO with their ISO 42001 standard. We're seeing from our position, a lot of organizations look to both these laws and standards. One, yes, is a bit of a compliance function. Naturally, they're going to have to meet the bar that is set in these standards and laws. But 2, really as an enabler, So most folks are trying to get the most out of this technology, and they realize that to be able to do that, they're going to have to put a little bit of structure in place to make that happen. So that usually starts from a very practical perspective of putting an AI policy in place. I would always recommend that it's a really strong starting point for any organization thinking about adopting AI across their workforce to look to put a policy in place, first of all. And that policy can set out things like the goals that you're trying to achieve by using AI, the principles that you're going to adhere to while you're adopting this technology. And it's going to put things like the reporting structures and the different standards in place that you need to meet as an organization to be able to do this effectively. Now, the policy is just a starting point. And once that's in place, there are a number of different other things that you can then look to do from a very practical perspective to get set up for this. What I want to stress is that the overall goal here is really to get the most out of these technologies. They're tremendously powerful in terms of what they can do, but they do require structure to be able to get to realize the advantage of that power. And I think Timur and I are just about to speak to how you might do that in a legal context in terms of the different AI tools out there to be able to streamline and automate some aspects of the legal and compliance function of a large business. So we'll return to the EU Act, but maybe I'll pass over, Timur, to you for a quick introduction in terms of how you're seeing AI transform the way that a legal function operates.
Ryan, thanks a lot. And thank you for giving this very brief and very colorful illustration of the current landscape. So indeed, what we have been seeing these days being in-house compliance and legal people, that the landscape is evolving. The regulatory landscape is evolving. So as a practical tip to legal and compliance people who work for the companies, I would recommend to check out if there are any regulatory standards or laws that are applicable to you. The thing is that you might be developing the AI system or you might be using AI systems. So also depending where are you located, there might be also certain standards and regulation that you have to follow. I hope that you did this review already so you know what regulations are applicable to you. The thing is, for example, as Ryan has said, for the EU companies, we have the standards in place, the EU AI Act. The thing is that there are certain deadlines for different categories of the companies that have been using AI, and that will be for next couple of years. But still, the standard is there, and we have to comply with that. So the first step that I would think might be a good idea for internal in-house legal and compliance people to do to check what you have inside and what you have to comply with. And based on that, as Ryan has recommended, it might be a very good idea to develop a compliance policy that will be dedicated to responsible AI. From the practical perspective, what I have seen that sometimes it's difficult to allocate the AI topic as such when you are talking, for example, to developers or when you are talking about innovations and legal regulation or standards that the company has to follow in deploying these AI systems within the company. So, for instance, I've been working with the people who are from different industries, and those from the tech. They say that, for example, in tech companies, there are a lot of people who are already involved in AI developments. And the thing is that it's very difficult to find out what should be the platform, how should the policy look like. And after all, the main question, who will be responsible for compliance with applicable AI standards and laws? Ryan, what's your opinion? When we deploy the policy, would it be compliance or legal person who should be in charge of this framework? Or we are more supporting functions and people from business or developers or users or somebody else should be appointed as responsible persons?
Yeah, that was great, Timur. There's actually three things that I'd like to unpack just from your comments there. The first is just about the different laws and standards that will apply. What you have to remember is in a digital age, a lot of these laws end up being extraterritorial because so many businesses operate across different jurisdictions. And these laws and standards are not necessarily looking to where you're based and where you're operating from, but they're very focused on where the end users, the people who are affected by your AI system, is based. So what we're seeing is a lot of organizations that may not even have operations like a physical presence in Europe are still very much affected by the EU AI Act because a lot of their customers may be in Europe through the internet, or people may be engaging with their software in Europe. It may be resold into Europe. So the first point I'd make on that is just to check whether or not your systems are being used in Europe, in which case these different laws are going to apply, and that will go for various different laws and standards around the world that will apply in the same way with US state level law if your technology is being used there. So that's the first point I'd make. The second point I would then make is very much around this distinction that you mentioned there around different folks building and deploying these systems. So actually, the journey looks quite different, right? If you're building AI internally, generally you're going to be working with a lot of sort of software engineers and AI engineers, and you're really going to have access to the underlying tech that you're building. You're going to be training models against data sets. There is a lot of compliance work to be done there, particularly if, for example, these systems are high risk. But it's actually a fundamentally different workflow than the compliance work that would have to be done if you're buying these tools in from a third party. That looks a lot more like the traditional sort of third-party risk management process that organizations have got very good at putting in place, particularly around things like information security. But that you cannot just apply an information security type traditional workflow to AI and hope that it's going to catch everything. Actually, there's a fundamental difference here when you're looking at these technologies, because you, as a procurer of that kind of technology, you want to figure out which AI systems are contained within these products that I'm buying, and which models have been trained against which data sets, and what kind of testing have you done to make sure that these are going to be fair when they're applied, and there's going to be no issues around drift and some of those classic things. You're asking fundamentally different questions here, but the process looks the same. And there is also a messy middle that we're seeing more and more of, where many organizations are buying in third-party solutions and then customizing them some way in-house as well. So being able to set up a bit of a function there so that you can look at this from all of those different angles is going to be critical. And that naturally is very cross-functional, which leads us on to the third point I'm going to make, which in response to your last question, Timur, was generally this is such a cross-functional space, and AI is touching all aspects of the modern enterprise that, quite frankly, I'm not super hung up on who owns the policy and who should be responsible for it. I do generally see that be the legal teams, but I've also seen that be other functions. Like if for example, you have an AI team where you're developing all of this stuff in-house, sometimes they may own the policy, and that's completely okay. Just as long as the policy's there is normally my starting point. So getting that in place, putting it there, making sure that folks across your business are aware of the different guidelines that they should be operating under, and making sure that you keep that under constant review. I'm sure everyone on the webinar has spent a lot of time this year thinking about things like agentic AI, which is still relatively new to the enterprise level, but it poses, again, additional questions, and we're seeing folks come back and revise their policies. So making sure that you have the structures in place to come back, analyze these over time, and make sure that they're improved and always fit for business is going to be the way forward on this one, whether that's owned by compliance, whether that's owned by the AI team, or whether that's owned by another section of C-suite.
Ryan, thank you for raising this question about cross-functionality. And indeed, I fully share your view. Being in legal and compliance for more 20 years, I've been thinking that specifically this topic requires contributions from different functions. And sometimes what I have seen on practice, what people asked me, who should do this AI governance in the company, because sometimes there are data privacy people, and it's kind of what they've been doing, but I fully agree with you that those are two different universes. With regard to AI governance, we are talking about standards that are aimed basically on control over AI systems that we deploy to ensure that we are not violating fundamental rights. While with data privacy, the legislation is, of course, it's pretty obvious, focused on data privacy legislation and GDPR if we are talking about Europe. The similar legislations in other parts of the world. So indeed, it should be a cross-functional work. Based on practice, I have seen that's also very good to have people from information security background within that. That would allow, first of all, to ensure that all right people are on board. The second thing, as we are talking about legal regulations on top of AI legislation, we indeed still have data privacy legislation, and there might be certain legislations, for example, I've heard that it is in Germany, that might trigger the security or secrecy legislation. So that would mean that you should have a cross-functional team to ensure that your AI governance system is in place. So indeed, please think of having a policy. Please make inventory of the systems that you are using as a company. In case if you are deploying your own, please check against the standards or applicable legislation. And I would fully agree with Ryan saying that, legally, companies that have been working with Europe might be triggered by the EUI Act. And what I can tell you as a legal and compliance person on practice, very often companies want that the AI products that they've been purchasing should be in compliance with EU AI Act. Sometimes people even do not know what exactly the compliance should look like, but it should be there. So there you should tick the box that the particular AI legislation is in place. I don't know, Ryan, if there are any solutions that will allow companies to comply with these AI governance standards, because indeed it is such a new universe for all of us.
Yeah, there are, and I mean it's one of the things that my company offers, right? So we do a software platform that helps folks do this. But rather than necessarily pitch everyone on the call, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to speak to a high level that if you were to look for specific AI governance software, here are the kind of things that it would need to have. So you would need to have a really strong intake process. So this is a way that folks across the business could come along and say, right, I have an important business problem here that could be solved by using an AI tool. How do I put some structure? How do I go and raise that request somewhere? And how can I capture and provide enough details about what it is that I'm trying to do that the wider business could make a decision on it to see whether it is aligned with the goals and standards set out in the policy. Generally, that process should be risk-based. So what you want to ensure is that if something is a very low-risk AI system, that and a low-risk use case, that you're able to get that quickly approved and into the business so that folks can realize the benefits of whatever it is that technology is bringing to solve that business problem. But then you also want to ensure that if something is higher risk, that it's subject to additional scrutiny, and potentially you may have to put different mitigations in place in respect of different risks that have been identified throughout that analysis process. Generally, you'll want to capture more information. So you really need to have a strong dynamic intake process that's built to handle that wide range of different use cases, and also to capture whether this is something you're buying from a third party, or whether you're building, or whether you're customizing in the sense of the point I made earlier. So that's really the starting point. I like to always refer to that as the front door. Make sure that you have some kind of front door. Just a practical tip on that, what I would say is do not worry about getting it perfect first time. I've been doing this for many years now, and I've never seen any organization that got it perfect first time. But what I have seen sometimes is organizations strive so hard for perfection that they end up taking way longer to even get that first version of the front door of the intake process out there, and they've really delayed a lot of practical learnings they could have had by standing it up early and then iterating. So that's very much the intake process. Then, as Timur mentioned, you will also need to have a really good AI inventory. Many folks will start here in building out an inventory in something like Microsoft Excel. Why not? To be honest, I always say that's a great starting point. It's better than doing nothing. But generally what happens is folks will start and they will go row by row and they will list sort of AI row 1, AI row 2, AI row 3. That's a fine starting point, but actually you're missing a lot of the nuance that goes into building a proper AI inventory. Again, going back to the point of whether you build, buy, or customize, you will need to capture information about the vendors that you're working with. You'll need to capture information about the products that you're buying from those vendors. Within those products, there can be one AI system or there can be multiple. So you need to keep a track of all those individual AI systems there. And this term AI system is actually very important because if you look at the laws and standards, AI system is the regulated concept under the EU AI Act. So making sure that you have an inventory of all of your actual AI systems is going to be crucial. And those AI systems themselves, to complicate matters further, can be made up of one model trained against a data set, or it could be made up of multiple models trained against multiple data sets, all working together. And if you chuck agentic AI in the mix here as well, where they can call different services, like calling APIs, calling MCP servers, you very quickly see that there's a lot of different moving parts here, and trying to put some structure to that so that you can capture that is going to be crucial. You really cannot measure what you haven't mapped. So I really view an inventory as a crucial part of the process. Now, as you get a bit more experience with this, your inventory can be automated over time, so that it's automatically kept up to date and you don't have to worry about manually going back row by row and updating things. But definitely what I would advise folks on the call to do is to think about their inventory in that type of structure. And once you've got that, you're also then able to look at some of the more advanced stuff in terms of automated risk identification and compliance with all the different laws and standards, and how do you get insights into your whole program with everything built up there. There's lots of moving parts. Ideally, you would have that showing in different dashboards and that kind of thing. But that's just a flavor of what I think a good AI governance program looks like. And my word of warning would be, I appreciate that might seem slightly overwhelming for folks that have not done anything yet in this space, putting all of that there. But it goes back to my initial point where iterating over this over time is so much better than trying to get it all right in one go. I myself am very much a big fan of learning by doing. And I think in a space as new as AI and AI governance, we're really figuring a lot of this out for the first time at the moment. So you will do a tremendous amount of learning, and you will probably, folks in this call will probably go down that path and start doing some of it, and they'll come to me with stuff that I haven't heard yet in this space. So if that does happen, please drop me an email after this, because I would love to learn from you too. Timur, over to you.
Guys, we have a question regarding confidentiality. We all know that legal and compliance team work a lot with confidential information. What are your advices regarding this? Like, what are the important tips that our legal and compliance colleagues, professionals, should take into account?
Yulia, thanks for raising that. And indeed, it's a hot topic. It's a provocative one. And here, indeed, we will need view of Ryan about that, as long as recently we had LinkedIn poll we ran, and we asked legal and compliance communities about the main concerns they have when they start to deploy legal and compliance AI solutions. And no surprise, the winner is confidentiality. Ryan, you've been in the industry, you know how it works. Should we still feel concerned when we are testing AI solutions where that the information will somehow get lost, there will be a leakage, or we are also all of us are really concerned if it will be used for training of other LLMs. I don't know, people really care about that. So can you please navigate us across those risks, real concerns, and myths, probably?
Yes, this is a great question, and to truly answer it, let me take you all back in time about 20 years ago, when it was very common for companies to run their own servers. I remember my dad ran a small business here in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and I remember going down to his office as a young child, and he had a separate room dedicated to the servers, and it was just full wall to wall of the servers that ran his small business at that time. Um, Back then, everyone was pretty confident, right? My data is stored locally. I know physically where it is, and I'm able to go there and switch it off if I'm ever getting worried about someone entering that server when they shouldn't be. So uh, that was the model for actually a very long time for many businesses. I'm giving an example on a micro scale there, but on a sort of macro scale, like banks would have had their own sort of servers, gigantic facilities that they would have saved and stored all of their data in. And probably in the past sort of 10 to 15 years, we've had to navigate that transition to the cloud, where lots of businesses said, you know what, running these own servers and maintaining them is a utility for my business. It's not core to what I'm trying to do. So I really shouldn't have to worry about coming in late at night and flicking servers on and off and making sure that they're updated properly and getting someone around to maintain them on a business. That's distracting for me. I need to focus on something, what's actually really matters to my business. So many opted to use the hyperscalers and put that kind of information into the cloud. And as we were making that transition to the cloud, the same questions were arising about confidentiality. So how can I be sure that my data is going to be safe whenever I put it into the cloud, as it were? And a whole sort of area popped up around information security and third-party risk management to vet folks and to see whether or not they had the right controls in place across their organization to be able to handle and maintain that data in a really safe and secure way. And there's now a very mature ecosystem of standards and compliance, things like the SOC 2 standard, which is very prominent across North America, and the ISO 27001 information security standard. Actually, our audit, complete a side note, but our audit for 27001 is today. So we are deep in the middle of prepping for that again. Annually, we go through annual audits to check our internal security postures to make sure that we as an organization are safe to hold our customers' data, because it's super important that you do maintain this. And from our own infrastructure, what we do is we work with the hyperscalers, and we will put our data onto their platforms, and we will make sure that we have all the right configurations and that they have all of the right security certificates and things like that to keep that information safe. And I think a lot of those learnings that we learned through that migration to the cloud are just as applicable here in the AI world. So from a practical perspective, there's a couple of different things that you can do. You can very much, if you're sort of an enterprise side, you can get sort of like licenses with these hyperscalers to use the foundational models in very secure environments so that your data never leaves. And we've seen many of our enterprise customers kind of stand up their own version of some of those LLMs and say, hey, this is our internal version. They will still generally put a policy in place to say, hey, don't be pasting the most sensitive information that we've got here, but they generally are quite comfortable with it because they know they've done deep vetting of those kind of solutions to make sure that the data never leaves, and they felt very comfortable about that fact. That's one if you're doing it that way, but then I guess the problem is a little bit harder if there's a middleman between you and the model. So quite often a lot of third-party vendors are now bringing in their own AI-powered features, and they will bring that connection to you. As part of that connection, it can be done in many different ways. They could just be calling the API endpoints of some of these big foundational models. They could be having their own private deployment. You don't know from the outside, but you need to find out. So it goes back to the point I was making earlier about the kind of due diligence you can do around this. Vendors are now used to answering more questions around how their AI is built and prepared. So your goal as a legal and compliance professional is to try and uncover some of that information. You absolutely want to be asking questions like, okay, this underlying model, where is it hosted? How is it accessed? How does my data transfer between your platform and that model and back? And that will help you uncover a lot of different things. Generally, I see a lot of folks contracting around that training data point to make sure and putting contractual protections in place to make sure that their data is never used for training data purposes. So that is one way of doing it. But I think, yeah, it's a multi-pronged approach that you need to take to try and get to the bottom of this. But I do myself feel reasonably comfortable that it's generally quite achievable now to ensure the confidentiality of your data if you ask those right questions and make sure it's set up in the right way. But Timur, interested to hear if you've got any experience as well, potentially putting some of those clauses in contracts and how you've got on.
Yeah, Ryan, thanks for raising that, and thank you for sharing the practical tips. So now we know how we can approach that. Now we know how we can assess those type of risks. From the practical perspective, maybe there might be also an idea if you are using the particular solution, like for example, for the testing period, please do not insert actual information, numbers, names, because it really doesn't matter for the system, while you want to be on the safe side from the confidentiality perspective. So maybe that's another tip from us with Ryan that we would like to share with you as legal and compliance professionals who are now using more and more AI solutions. Ryan, in the same time, would you see any risks for us as in-house people who started to deploy AI solutions? Maybe not in the confidentiality area, maybe there is something else what we should be aware of before starting using the system or during using the usage of the AI systems. If there are any bottlenecks that you as a person from inside could share with us.
Yeah, so excuse me for this one, but I'm going to give you a very lawyerly answer, and I'm going to say that the risks, they really depend on what we're looking at here. So there's a wide array of risks that these tools can pose to your organization. Some of those can be legal and regulatory, making sure that you comply with the right different laws and standards that are applicable to your business. Some of them can be reputational. So quite often, I'm sure everyone's seen headlines of AI solutions that were maybe rushed out there before they were fully ready and did not perform in production, maybe the way that they were originally envisaged or intended. So there's definitely reputational risks. And then there's a wider range of sort of ERM risks as well, so enterprise risk management type stuff. So does this vendor have the certifications needed to be a trustworthy operator in the market? Is there any kind of particular financial risks that come with this tool as well, in the way maybe the pricing is structured? Is there different risks based on as you're building this and the deployment context? So it's one of those things that we've gone very deep on, and we've as part of our product, we actually give customers a risk taxonomy with 250 different AI risks, all properly mapped throughout the platform, so that you can identify them as they arise. There's many risks that are quite novel to an organization that you will never have seen before in your ERM processes. So trying to set something up that can automatically identify those, I think, is very helpful. But yes, it's a bit of a non-answer in the sense that it does depend on the circumstances, but there are definitely a range of risks. But there are also a lot of mitigations that you can put in place to try and address those risks as they arise.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Ryan. And indeed, the risks might be different depending on the situation and the context. Uh, as a practical tip, maybe we can say that first of all, human oversight is critical. No matter what you will get as an answer on your request with regards to the legal world or compliance things, it's good to find out the way to double check that. Sometimes people ask the legal AI solution to help with prompting in order to write to ask right questions. Could be also an option that I've heard. I've heard also that what legal and compliance people are doing. Another thing would be possibly the approach that I developed for myself. Actually, I thought to myself that I've been using those type of helpers in order to save time for the tasks that I will be able to do by myself, but it will take much longer time. For instance, if we need an overview of the legislation over foreign country just to have an understanding what's going on there, that's one story. I agree with Ryan. Another thing, if you are an arbitration lawyer, right, there are high stakes and you just searched. Now we're not saying in internet, we're just using the legal AI solutions, and then you come up with the results, not checking that. And we've heard those stories. It might bring to bad results. So indeed, human oversight is critical in terms of what you got. Right, script is critical. And frankly, Ryan, what do you think? Uh, Maybe 20, 25 years ago, those helpers existed. At that time, it was not AI, it were ourselves, junior lawyers at that time, who were making research for the partners, if you are the law firm, or for the senior in-house legal leaders, and they were making these human oversight. So frankly, the technology evolves, but the approach should be the same probably. What do you think, Ryan?
Yes, I completely agree. And actually, I'm very glad of the direction you've taken this conversation in, because we have talked a lot about the risks here, which is very important, but also I really do like focusing on the opportunities as well. So if you're able to get the proper risk management process in place, you're able to get more out of these tools, and the kind of things that you can get out of these tools are like the example you provided. I remember spending many's a long night in my private practice days doing deep legal research that would have taken me hours and hours to do. And to have had a tool like what's available today, I would have done some unholy things to get my hands on that, because it's it is tremendously powerful what you can do with this. And it really is tremendous, like what you can get out of these tools, but having the right structures in place to make sure that that happens is crucial. You've touched on one example there on legal research and how it can save a tremendous amount of time, but also I was a transactional lawyer, so I would have spent a lot of time getting documents ready for signing and checking things like CPs before we sign something. A lot of this can now be managed by technology. This will free folks up to spend time on higher value items. It really does present the opportunity for lawyers to be more of a strategic advisor than was ever possible before, because they're spending less time even at the earlier stages of their careers doing things like renaming PDFs or updating signature blocks within documents. One comment I'll make just about a broader trend that I'm reading a lot around is potentially whether this limits the scope for junior lawyers earlier on in their career. There is an important conversation going on globally there to say, hey, is there still the opportunity for junior lawyers to get the training they need to become great senior lawyers? And what I will say about that is, just in my own experiences, I've been kind of blown away, quite frankly, by the skills of some of these the junior people coming onto the workforce now. They are completely AI native. They've grown up with it. They've played around with it for the past 2-3 years in their bedrooms. They used it for their examinations at university, and they really understand this technology, and they really understand actually how to wrangle it and get the most out of it. Quite often I'm seeing myself learn from the junior folks in terms of how to get the best out of these tools. So I do think that the future is still very bright for junior lawyers, but they're just going to potentially be spending their time on different things than I was working on when I was in their position.
Yeah, right. I fully agree with you. And if we talk to the lawyers who are elderly than we are, they might remember even the time when they were checking for laws and information in the books, in the textbooks, and in the US there were, if you have seen movies, yeah, and probably in Ireland as well, right? The case law. So a lot of books with cases. So lawyers still exist, but now we're using more uh, advanced technologies, and the new generation of lawyers will be using even more advanced innovations. The thing is, I would agree with you that the critical thinking will still be the key to the right solution. So we were thinking indeed, we were talking a lot in the community whether legal profession will still alive, or it will be killed by the innovation. But what I have seen that now the problem is not with gathering the information, but about ensuring its quality. And for that purpose, we could still be there to ensure that the answer that we are getting from the legal AI system is the right one, that it was checked, that it was challenged, and that the level of control is still there. So indeed, it's an interesting time, and we are learning a lot from juniors, and they might also bring another approach to that. But still, as you have said, after all, it will be about the quality of the decisions that we take based on, in our case, AI solutions. Prior to that, that was databases. Prior to that, it were in the books. So indeed, probably for legal and compliance, it will be good to explore those opportunities to raise the efficiencies, and in the same time to understand that it's not replacing us. It might be a very efficient assistant to us, in case if we know what questions to ask, in case if we understand how the result should look like from the quality perspective.
Exactly.
I think after Ryan, go ahead, and after that, I'll ask one question from the LinkedIn live chat. So yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to make a comment about the sort of historical lawyer-client relationship, and it is one that's very much built on trust, right? Folks, there's a real relationship element to it that I just don't think is going to go away anywhere. So like that is really important. Like folks turn to their lawyers at some of the most crucial times of their business and professional life, and they really have to trust the person on the other side of that, the advisor, to make sure that they're getting the help they need. And I just don't see any kind of technology replacing that anytime soon. But what I do see happening is technology allowing that to be, that kind of advice and that kind of relationship to be even stronger in the future.
Thank you. We have a question from the LinkedIn live chat. As a legal fresher entering the profession during rapid AI adoption, which skills or practice areas do you believe will become most valuable over the next 3-5 years?
Yeah, so I think the core skills are still going to be the same. So to Timur's point, like making sure that you can very much critically analyze a situation, making sure that you can understand the nuances of different legal drafting, different positions, think strategically. I think all of that will be the same. At the end of the day, someone still has to review the outputs of these tools to make sure that they're actually aligned, because quite often, as we all know, they can make mistakes. So I think, and then the relationship elements that I've just spoken about, I think that's still going to be a crucial skill. But I just see that the technology is providing the opportunity for folks to focus on building those skills potentially earlier in their career than was possible previously. But Timur, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
I would agree that the skills will probably remain the same. I'm for maybe 20 plus years in the profession, and I would think that the skills should remain the same with a lawyer who wants to deliver, who wants to bring a quality result. And indeed, critical thinking, that is important. The second thing, what I would recommend based on my practice, that would be just repeating this nice saying that practice makes perfect. Try to use these systems, try to see how it works. You will be finding a lot of interesting solutions that will allow you to get fantastic results. Every week, something is changing, and new options and new opportunities actually appear within these new innovations. So it's good to practice. The thing is that I can tell you, as an international lawyer, a guy who is responsible for compliance in few countries, that those type of solutions help you to get the helicopter view. It helps you to pick up things that prior to that, 20 years ago, would require you to approach the lawyers, outside counsels, and it will take time, it will take money to get the answers, which now you can get in a second. So it's indeed a big difference, but still you should be curious, I believe. I think critical thinking is a must. Wish to bring a quality result is something that will remain the focus of compliance or legal professional, no matter in what year he is living currently. So the skills are the same. The opportunities and options for lawyers are just getting better and better. So Yulia, hopefully we were able to address the question, and thanks for our participant for raising this extremely interesting question.
Yeah, based on reactions, I mean, likes and hearts in our LinkedIn platform, I think, yes, your responses were very comprehensive. Guys, we have 10 more minutes until the end of our webinar. So let me ask a few more questions we have from our audience. The first one is, do you think most companies are ready for AI governance in practice? What do you think?
I'm happy to comment on that one. So what I will say is, look, everyone's facing this at the same time, and most companies are still very early in their AI governance journey. I think that's still okay, because there's a long way to go with this. But I do think it's really important to start seriously thinking about putting the structures in place. To give you an idea of like some of the furthest ahead companies in the market that I'm seeing, they generally already have a really robust AI inventory built out. They have a really robust intake process that captures all of those different nuances I mentioned earlier. Some of them may even have dedicated teams to this as well. So we're seeing more and more that organizations are hiring a senior leader to own this function for them and to be responsible for it and put the right structures in place to review all these different requests and make sure that they've been escalated and things like that in the right way. Now, it generally doesn't need to be a huge function relative to other sides of the business or other parts of the business, but sometimes having someone whose sole responsibility to own this is actually really, really helpful. I've seen that be tremendously effective. But in general, most of the market are still thinking about how they can do this. Quite frankly, a lot of the market are still thinking about how they can approach AI in the first place and how can they even start using some of this technology in their business and what does it actually mean for them. So if you haven't done anything yet, I would say don't panic and don't worry. But what I would say is it's definitely worth thinking about taking some of those initial steps that we discussed earlier to start building out a bit of a program. And if you can't necessarily hire a specific function or anything like that, I would say don't worry. There's a lot of very practical things that you can do yourself to be able to put the foundations in place and start putting a bit of a structure around it. So Timur, do you have anything to add to those comments?
Ryan, I agree with what you have said, that many companies have started the preparation probably, or at least there is such a huge interest. And maybe we can say that maybe for the first time in the compliance history, there is a topic that has such a great interest, driven not only by compliance and legal people, but also by everybody else. Because now everybody is talking about AI. There is a genuine interest of everyone in developing those things. And as you have said, in many situations that what I have also seen, the companies just start to explore how to use AI as a new tool. And in many cases, the AI governance comes as a second topic, as a dessert, so to say, to this first big AI as such thing. And of course, we have seen that there is a big interest in AI governance. Would also agree that not everyone knows how they should deploy that. No, not everyone understands in what way they should maintain the governance system, what should be there. But what I would recommend, as we have said, check the respective legislation, check what requirements you have to comply with, including, for example, AI literacy. That would mean, for instance, trainings for people. So there might be surprises that maybe you've never heard of, or maybe in your regulatory landscape there is something that we with Ryan don't know, because we are mainly referring to the European, and I know that Ryan also refers to the US standards. In other parts of the world might be something else. So checking against the legislation that is applicable to you might be a very good source of finding your way how to proceed with further steps. And indeed, I also hope that these things are becoming more and more traditional, so to say, for compliance people, routine for compliance people. We're in the very beginning of this road, but we clearly understand that the compliance framework should be deployed not only with regard to sanctions, anti-bribery, and few other uh, areas that compliance was active so far, but also we should pay attention to the AI governance. And we should say that there might be huge fines. There might be another, things that compliance people would prefer to tell to the business in case if they are not heard, but not even things like that, just to ensure that you are doing right thing, because human oversight after all is critical in deployment of all AI solutions in the companies. And I think everybody understands that, or should understand that. So it's not only about the legal stuff, it's not about governance as such, it's about the way how we should proceed in order to ensure that everything will be under control.
Thank you, guys. One more question. So we've talked a lot about confidentiality, about accuracy, judgment, skills. And so the next question is, how can organizations approaching AI governance and compliance in a practical way without overcomplicating it? So it's also very important to discuss.
Yes, and that final bit about not overcomplicating it, I think is also crucial there, because it has to be a right fit. The last thing you ever want to do if you're a small organization is put three different committees in place and have a circular process where different, that is how an AI governance program dies a horrible death, unfortunately. You want to make sure it's proportionate to the size of your organization and what you're doing. And actually, on my website, I will drop it in the LinkedIn live chat after this, but on our website, we've prepared a couple of guides on exactly this point. So what are the practical things that you can put in place? So how do you put a lightweight intake process in place? How do you put that lightweight AI registry in place? And how do you make sure, just at a high level, that you're aligned with the different laws and standards in this space? I think there's a bunch of, and how do you draft a policy? We have a guide on that as well. There's a lot of very practical, basic things that you can do here today that don't really take that much time and effort to get started. And then it's a case of iterating on them over time. So it won't be perfect in the first go, and that's okay. But maybe in the second version and the third version, as you iterate on this, you will get closer to a more robust process, and you will make mistakes along the way. I don't know any AI governance professional that hasn't made mistakes when starting in this space, because it is new. So the key is just to listen to the feedback from your internal stakeholders and iterate based on that. So people will come to you with very good ideas in terms of way that you can improve them. And if you take those on board and have kind of an open door policy to striving towards achieving something really good in this space, I don't think in the long term you're going to stray too far wrong. But Timur, any thoughts from your side on building that out?
I will probably add one thing from the in-house standpoint. What I've seen is really works is an effort to find like-minded people in the organization, someone who will be the enthusiast like yourself in terms of deploying AI, in terms of deploying AI in a responsible way. You'll be surprised to find out that you are not alone. You'll find few people, and based on my practice, it's good to maybe create a forum or platform. Sometimes those might be people not even from your country. It might be people from your headquarters, or people from your subsidiary if you're working at the headquarters. And with that, there might be a very good boost to start creating AI governance together. The thing is that everybody is talking about that, everybody is thinking about that. So there is a big chance that you will find like-minded people with whom you will be able to develop the framework together. And I agree with you. Please don't be afraid of mistakes. We are all in the very beginning of this new era. Yulia, hopefully we were able to address the question.
Yes, I think yes. We almost don't have any time, like 1 minute till the end. But do you have anything to add, just as a last minute thoughts from your side? If not, then I have a question for you. What are your key takeaways? Like key takeaways from today's discussion for our audience.
Yeah, you know what? I'll just give you one actually, because I think it's the most important one of the day, which is if you haven't already, please do get started in building out your AI governance program. Just get started. Don't worry about it not being perfect at the first beginning. Take a look at some of the guides that I'm going to share in the LinkedIn Live afterwards, and that will give you the foundation to be able to get moving. And just get started, and you will learn a tremendous amount along the way.
Thank you. Timur, from your side.
I would say practice makes perfect. Try, explore. This is a fantastic new world that will tremendously change our approach to the profession, and it will help a lot. So indeed, as Ryan has said, might be a good idea to check out those standards that Ryan would share as a basis for the AI governance. And in the same time, please just be very open to new. Don't be afraid, and just start doing things.
Okay, thank you so much. The very last, I hope, question from our chat. What is the biggest challenge compliance departments face when assessing AI systems? And should compliance professionals develop some level of AI expertise themselves or rely on closer collaboration with technical teams? Also very crucial to discuss.
I would say it depends. I would say cross functionality is a key. I would say that it's very important to work together with information security people and collaborate with privacy teams, or if you need this expertise to develop it at the extent that might be needed. In the same time, I believe we should not all of us become IT specialists. We should just know what questions we should ask and whom we can ask those questions. Ryan, maybe something from your side.
Yeah, I think naturally the scariest bit about it is going to be the potential technical element. But actually, this is such a cross-functional space that I think that folks from a legal background have so much to bring to the area because they understand things like risk management and they understand what control is and how you properly implement that and monitor that. You do not need to be an expert in terms of like trying to train a foundational model yourself to really excel and thrive in this space. But a little bit of understanding around that definitely does help. So to the extent you're able to attend webinars like this, do research online to find different resources. There's a lot out there already that you can avail of. And you'll find that once you start getting a little bit familiar with the whole concept and the different areas of the space, it's maybe not quite as scary as it first seemed.
Okay, thank you. And I think we can closing up our webinar. So thank you so much, Timur and Ryan, for being with us today, for sharing your experience, your viewpoints. And of course, thank you all for joining us today. And thank you for your questions. I think, closing key message from today's conversation is that AI can be a powerful tool for all of us, for legal and compliance teams, but we need to use them very thoughtfully, responsibly, and with proper human oversight. So thank you so much. Have a good day. We hope our session has been useful and practical enough. And thank you once again, and see you soon at our future events. Do you have anything to add, Ryan, Timur?
Just a huge thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Yulia.
Yeah. Ryan, you've mentioned your website with some guides. If it's okay, and if you would like to post us the link to your website, just share it with us, and we will do this.
But yes, there's just some helpful guides on there, very practical in terms of how you can get started in the space.
Good, good. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.